Okay, welcome back. This is two-point perspective drawing with cityscape, buildings, etc. We're in phase 2 here, where we've already got our building in place, and this is stuff that you've already seen. We have a few breaks in the sidewalk to show you the proper angle of the sidewalk on the A side of the building. We've gotten started on some siding here, or not siding, but actually the wood floor. I'm going to keep going with this wood floor and kind of follow through. And then what I want to do is a little trick to help push it back into the room a little bit, with maybe just a little bit of shading. And I'm trying to widen these spaces just a little bit between the wood floor planks to give you an idea that, hey, that wood floor is, back there in the room. And this line for the end of my door frame, I could use a little more weight. So I'm going to make that a little bit of a heavier line. Now, add a little weight to this top corner right here. And the reason I'm adding a little weight to these is just so you can see where they are in the video. I probably normally would not do that, that much line weight, because lines that are heavier tend to look a little closer. Since I want to push those back, that's what I want to do. But what I will do is once I get these lines a little bit heavier so you can see where they are, then I just want to shade a little bit, So I'll take my door and the space in there. Just going to shade that part of the room in. And shade this part of the window as well. And I'm not looking to shade it perfectly, but just to give you an idea, a little stronger sense of depth of the interior versus exterior. Now, in particular, you could do some shading on the siding of your building. You could add things like gutters, do all kinds of stuff. If you're going to do something like shading, it's a simple principle, but it's just it can be a little bit, or feel a little tedious. I'm going to use centimeters and use half centimeters for marks. 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to follow through and do all of these, but what you need to see is that the distance between each line on your siding, since this is all the same location in space, they should be the same measurement, okay? And what I want you to see is this. When you come down here in the middle, the angle is quite different. It's almost horizontal. And when I do this line for the siding, I'm only going to draw it on the exterior wall. So I have 3 lines there that I would draw for that siding. And then I'm going to just move the ruler up and change the angle of the ruler slightly for every one. In other words, every one of the lines on your siding should be unique. There's not one line on the siding of the building in your drawing that should be the same angle as any other. The angles are constantly changing because you're constantly turning the ruler to meet up with the vanishing point. And remember, the vanishing point in this drawing tells me the angles. Now what you're not seeing is this. See? Each angle changes as the ruler turns all the way up. So that's kind of the idea. Now the ones up top, there's nothing in the way, so I can just draw straight across. A little bit easier. It takes less time on these to finish and follow through. And there you have it. So let's say the bottom of the building is stucco and the rest of this is siding or something like that, if that's what you want it to be. Now, how to draw buildings in your background and make sure that they look right, like you still use the same vanishing points. Like this is point A. These red dotted lines indicate that that's the proper angle for the top and bottom of even the buildings that are way back here. The technique, the recipe of using vanishing points doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the size and the angle of your lines. Now I've got my shadow drawing here, and this is going to be kind of important because if I want to, I can go back here and mark where the corner of my building is going to be. Let's say it's a little farther back from the sidewalk. Let's say I'll mark it right there. Well, I put my ruler up against that mark, but then the only part I have to draw is the top, like so. Now the bottom, since this is set farther back, what I like about it is I can go from there, line it up to that mark that's on the shadow drawing, but to come up here to the actual side of the building and start there, like so. So see, I left a gap here because that's behind this building. You won't see that part of it, and that's what I like about the depth that you can create using the shadow drawing technique. Now from here at the top, I'm going to make a line that goes toward point B, and now a line that goes again toward point A, like that. Now I can determine where I want this building to end up, and let's say I like about right there. I'll come down and I'm done with that end. And then over here I can see about that much of the building, so I'm going to cut it loose. And there I have a building that's in the proper place. You know, can do a little erasing. Let's say I want to put a gap here, and I want a little space between the buildings here. This one doesn't have much space between them, but let's say I do. So I put that mark right there. I'm going to use vanishing point A to determine my angle for the bottom side of this building, and I want the bottom of this one to come back up all the way to the sidewalk, to there. So there's a little space like an alley between the buildings there. Then I'll draw another vertical line from that point up. And this is going to be a really tall building that's in my background. And look at how severe. Let's say it goes all the way up to there. I still have to use point B. So my ruler is going to be at quite a severe angle, like that. You know, that is the top of that building that's way back there. And then point A for the other side. And it's going to be a long building. It goes back behind like so. So here I've got the sidewalk, a little front courtway, so to speak, and an alleyway that looks like it goes around that corner between. All because I just moved it up, put a little space between, and then drew my line before I started to decide where this one goes. And the next thing to do will be the other end of my building where it comes to an end, right there. So if I now erase the horizon, I developed a pretty interesting scene with very true and almost flawless perspective. This building looks right, and you might think, well, no, it doesn't. Well, yes, it does, and the reason is because it's determined by the vanishing point. Determined by the vanishing point. These buildings are in correct perspective. I could use windows, draw a window using doorways, the same windows and doors with the same vanishing point. On these sides of the building, I have to use point B. So let's say these buildings are farther away. So let's say my door is going to be about that tall, you know, because it's a little bit farther. Well, maybe a little bit taller, but not by much. Say there's the left-hand side of my doorway on this building, and now I give myself the top of the door, and that's the proper size for a door on that building. The top and the bottom are determined by point B. The right and the left are vertical. One more thing, if you want to add something to your street here that can be kind of fun, you could do something like another sidewalk. You can eyeball this if you like how wide or far apart they need to be. Now what's cool about this is once I get that sidewalk in place, I can use these pre-existing distances to create these. For example, if I line my ruler up and I put it against that one, there's no room. Then I put this one up and I've got room for a line right there. That's the proper angle. Go up to the next pre-existing one. And again, I'm putting a line here because there's already a line here. And I'm making them with that same relationship in mind. So these are the correct perspective in this environment. It's kind of cool. I think the next thing we might do is the addition of a car or maybe a stop sign in our next demo. But this will give you a pretty good idea. Go back and replay this a few times and watch for these angles and how they're determined, which vanishing point, and you'll start to have a lot of fun with this. Peace.